everyone's talking about Brexit. People are trying to figure out exactly how negotiations will go, what happens next. What do you see as a transition deal? How long will that last? Are we talking 18 months or 2 years?
What the Prime Minister talked about on Tuesday is the need to move forward quickly after we've served the notice to scope out what the end state is going to look like, get agreement on a practical solution for the end state for the relationship between Britain and the rest of the European Union, but recognising that that will then take some time to implement. Now, until we get into the detailed talks, we can't say how much time. We've got to be pragmatic about this. There will be systems to be put in place. Businesses will need time to make the transition. The clear message that we're giving, and I think this works for Britain and it works for Europe, no cliff edges, no sudden change for business, plenty of time to adjust.
Businesses that we speak to here in Davos, London, New York, try and figure out exactly what the ideal solution would be. The Prime Minister was saying that she wants a better deal. What does that better deal actually look like?
Well, first of all, we have to recognise that on both sides there are political imperatives. From the UK side, we can no longer accept freedom of movement. That's clear. From the European side, they have a position about the indivisibility of the four freedoms in the internal market. That is clear as well. So we have to work within the parameters that are defined by the reality of politics to find a trading relationship, a security relationship, cooperation in a broad range of areas that allows the patterns of business that we already have, the supply chains that operate across Europe, to continue to operate with minimum disruption. That's good for Britain, but it's also good for our European Union partners.
But negotiations could be very short. If you have two sides that have opposite views and no one's ready to give in, then they could be done within 6 months.
Negotiations could be very short, but I suspect they won't be. We should be able to agree, I think, quite easily on the principles, but working through the detail will take longer. And I hope that we'll be able to get between Britain and the European Union quite early on in this process a sense of where we're going. I hope we'll be able to communicate that to the wider world, because the whole process has created uncertainty. That uncertainty is not in anybody's interest. The sooner we can start to give businesses, consumers a bit more certainty, the better it will be for the European economy as a whole, including Britain.
What happens if the UK comes back to a deal that Parliament doesn't want?
Well, I'm confident that we will get a deal that we will be able to explain to the British people, present to the British people, and Parliament will have an opportunity to express a view on it. But the government is clear that we have a mandate from the British people to take Britain out of the European Union, and we need to do that in the way that protects the economy to the maximum possible extent and allows us then to engage with the wider world in the way that the British people expect us to do.
Is it possible that the UK actually will become a tax haven and a kind of Monaco, where you protect your interests by becoming an island that offers a lot more than, for example, the European Union? And how would that sit with this inequality play?
Well, look, last time I checked, we were a little bit bigger than Monaco. And
a lot bigger.
The UK is the world's 6th largest economy, so we're not in the position of some of these island states that are often quoted. Look, I should be clear about this. Our strong preference is that Britain should remain in the mainstream of European economies. That means we need to be able to trade with our nearest neighbours in Europe. And so long as we can get a pragmatic and sensible outcome which works for Britain and works for the EU, Britain will remain in that economic mainstream. Right. But of course, if we're forced out, we will have to look at other ways of making ourselves competitive.
Including tax cuts?
Well, we'll have to look at all options. What we're not going to do is simply say, we can't compete anymore. We can compete. We can always compete. We're an inventive people, and we will find ways to maintain our competitiveness and to protect our standard of living. Our strong preference will be to do that by a close trading relationship with the European Union.
Chancellor, what kind of assurances can you give to financial services? In the Prime Minister's speech, financial services came, I think, at number 13. This is really the heartbeat for London.
It's a very important sector for our economy. Our European partners know that. They know that in talking about a comprehensive trade deal for Britain, it has to include goods and services because we're primarily a services producing economy. It has to include financial services because that's a very large part of our service economy. And we've got to be pragmatic about the challenges that having a cross-border financial services industry involves. And the sooner we can get into the detail with European political leaders and with European regulators as well to look at how this market can work in the future. Bearing in mind that this isn't just something that's good for Britain, it's good for Europe as well, because a huge proportion of Europe's financial transactions pass through the City of London.
But is it a priority?
It's a priority for the UK government, yes.
Absolutely. There's no doubt. The perception from, again, that speech is that it was almost a second thought.
Not at all. Not a second thought at all. I mean, financial services is not the only industry that we have in the UK. And we have to do a deal that works for all parts of the UK, all the devolved nations, all the sectors of our economy. But financial services is the single largest sector in terms of GVA. And we have to ensure that that's protected in the deal that we do.
Have you modelled how many job losses could happen in the next couple of years? Because of Brexit?
Of course, we've looked at all sorts of possible outcomes, but until we get into the real discussions with our European partners and start to look at what the options are, I don't think it's particularly helpful to explore different hypothetical outcomes. I think 6 months from now, we'll have a much clearer idea of where we collectively feel we can go, where the political imperatives on both sides allow us to find a meeting of minds that will work for our economy and work for the European economy.
Chancellor, I imagine you're speaking to a lot of CEOs, a lot of UK CEOs, a lot of foreign CEOs that have bases in the UK. What is the question you get asked the most?
Well, from business's point of view, the greatest toxicity around this process is the uncertainty. Business craves certainty. And what businesses are saying to us is, get on with it, get it done. Whatever the outcome, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, as soon as we know, we can start to plan around it, we can work with it. And the message from business is, we will live with any outcome you deliver, but just get on and deliver it. And I think the speech the Prime Minister made on Tuesday shows that we are committed to setting out our objectives, to engaging with this process. And the message I'm hearing back from counterparts across the European Union is that they are genuinely pleased that we've now set out our asks in a way that they can engage with.
When do you think they'll find out really more? And I know negotiations are very difficult to predict, but by the end of the summer, do you think if I'm a big CEO or a small CEO of a small company in the UK, I'll have a much clearer view of what my future will look like?
Well, I can't be certain about this, but I suspect that once the two sides engage and the French presidential elections are behind us, because of course that's a big political event on the horizon now, once we get past that stage, I suspect that there will start to be quite soon a sense of whether we are heading in the right direction, whether the two sides have engaged effectively and there is a coming together of views about what the future should look like. Business will be greatly reassured if it hears from both sides in the negotiation that we're moving forward, that we're working well together.
Chancellor, who does the UK negotiate with? Do you negotiate with Angela Merkel? Is it through the Commission? It's unclear already exactly the channels of communication that would be the strongest to get your message across.
It's not unclear at all. The European Union has made it absolutely clear that the Commission holds the negotiating mandate, and Michel Barnier has been appointed to negotiate on behalf of the Commission. But equally, the European Council has made clear that it will want to have, on behalf of the member state governments, a very close oversight of that process. So the day-to-day execution of the negotiating mandate will be in the hands of the Commission, but of course the strategic control of that will be in the hands of the Council.
Chancellor, are you worried about the velocity at which pound fell? The British pound?
I mean, nobody likes volatility in the currency markets or any other markets. We don't take a view on the correct level of the pound. The markets will determine that. And of course, it's not an absolute game, it's a relative game. People will look at what's happening to other currencies, and in other markets around the world. And we're confident that the markets do work and that sterling will find its appropriate level at any given time.
What if the level you deem not appropriate? Is there any? Do you foresee a situation where you have to go in a crisis meeting because the pound has dropped too much, which makes it good for exports, but actually very difficult for the current account deficit?
No, and we have a high degree of confidence in the way the foreign exchange markets work. They're very sophisticated. Of course, there are short-term movements which can be irritating at times, but over the medium term, I'm very confident that the markets will find the right level for currencies, and we believe it's one of the reasons Britain has been so resistant to the idea of ever being in the euro. We believe very strongly that having one currency linked to one economy and one fiscal authority allows that currency to move to reflect economic realities, and that's a positive thing.
And it's an unusual question from me to a chancellor or a finance minister, but there's not a level at which, because we're in uncertain times, is there a level where you will think that markets are misinterpreting the message coming from the government?
Oh, listen, politicians think they're being misinterpreted all the time by journalists, by markets, by business. We will continue to communicate our message. The markets will look at what's happening. I mean, we saw earlier this week, first of all, sterling fell on Monday, then it recovered sharply on Tuesday. Sometimes it takes the markets hours, a couple of days to digest what's going on and process it fully.
When do you think it will stabilize?
I can't answer that question. That's for the markets to decide.
Chancellor, give me a sense of what you're here to do in Davos. Do you think that a lot of world leaders have, I don't know if it's misinterpreted Brexit or actually misunderstood exactly the government's plan?
Well, first of all, it's not just about Brexit. There are a lot of other things going on in the world, including understanding the new administration in the United States and its agenda. So coming here to take part in the World Economic Forum, talking to people from around the world about the bigger challenges we face is also part of the equation. And of course, I shall be looking to contribute our views on world economic events, as well as to explain our plans for Brexit. And yeah, to some extent, there is a lack of understanding. I hope the Prime Minister's speech on Tuesday went a very long way to clarifying for many people what we plan.
A very final question. What do you see the UK-US relationship look like in the next 12 months?
Strong. The relationship between the UK and the US works in the way it does because it's not just robust at the top level, but it's very deep. It runs right down through our governments, through our societies, through our intelligence agencies, through our militaries. We work very closely together. And I'm confident, first of all, I'm confident that President Trump and Prime Minister May will develop a strong working relationship. But I'm also confident that the everyday contact that we have at every level will keep that relationship strong, whoever's in government in either country.